Gino's portal watching, but does he already know who his point guard is? You're on the Hoops Cap. Welcome in, and thank you for joining us on the Hoops Cap, powered by Big East Energy Network. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto. With me on Fridays, as always, is T. Baker. All right, T, so we got Gino in the portal. I'm fresh off a family vacation, so I'm catching up on a bunch of this stuff. Do you think that he already has a person in mind, or is like what's Gino's typical portal plans when it comes to this? Because he's really hesitant to go like full portal and bring in multiple players, but he has fit in strategic pieces. And Serah Williams has been mentioned, but she's obviously not point guard. So what are your thoughts here about who is going to be Gino's point guard for the 25-26 season?
Well, I think, as it relates to the portal, I think you're right that Gino tends to have a specific strategy. I think he tends to go in with exactly, what he's looking for and hopes to add just by, fitting in a specific piece. I think that he always goes in the portal with a specific piece in mind, as most coaches do. But, it hasn't necessarily been the case that that's where he gets his superstar recruits. That tends to be that it's more of filling a gap. And so one of the gaps is who is going to be UConn's point guard. And I think we've seen, Nika Mule was the point guard, when Paige was out, and then as a senior kind of stepped into that role and was great at it. Most assists in UConn women's basketball history. And then Kaitlyn Chen out of the portal was an experienced guard that could run the point, could quickly step into that role. I think what's unique about UConn is they have so many guards. It's just a question of who's that starting guard, who's the point guard. Could KK Arnold be that guard? Is that the answer to the question? Or is Gino looking in the portal for a more traditional point guard? One name that surfaced is Kayleigh Heckel, who was a highly touted recruit to USC. So that could be who they have in mind. But with the portal, you're always up against other teams recruiting that same player. So it's hard to say that they know at this point who that person is going to be.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because if you think about it, I think I saw someone say that AZ Fudd was not following Kayleigh Heckel until recently. And I know that's sometimes that can be silly season because, these girls follow each other on Instagram all the time. The men do it all the time. It could just be someone that she knows and respects, or a lot of times it's a tell that they've had conversations like, hey, you should probably come here or check it out if you're in the portal. And she is. Do you think Heckel is not just because of the proximity, because she is from Long Island, but do you think part of it is, she went to USC, maybe she thought she was going to get more playing time. I don't know. You go there and you're, it's the Juju Watkins show. I don't know what she would have expected going there. Do you think she feels like maybe she could get more minutes other places? That's got to be it, right?
It's so hard to know in this particular moment, what exactly is motivating the transfers. I think on the women's side in particular, there's just new money being introduced that Sure. I think is a major factor. And I'm curious actually what you think about this. It's something I think about, where do you think UConn women's basketball ranks and who can pay? I don't actually know the answer to that because revenue sharing is so new, but is that an advantage or disadvantage for a school like UConn on some level because they're not in a traditional Power 4 conference? I wonder about that question. But so it's a question of does someone like Kayleigh Heckel feel attracted to UConn because of the prestige of the ability? They're defending champs. She can jump right into a rotation that won last year. Or is there more money on the table? That's the part that I can't really decipher.
Yeah, I think there is because it's kind of all very cloak and dagger. If you go to, when you think about the bigger schools, you kind of know, like you said, it's a traditional power, whether it's an SEC school or a Big Ten. And then you think of, I use one example because we cover the men too. St. John's on the men's side has a billionaire, alumni that started Vitamin Water. And so he's got money to burn and he wants to help Rick Pitino out, right? So their roster is X, but there was also an article that Matt Norlander put out on CBS Sports about the money on the men's side. And the UConn men, their roster is somewhere near $8-9 million. So you have to assume, because of the revenue that the UConn women generate, not only for the sport, but also for the university, that they're going to have a similar threshold. Maybe it's not 8 or 9 million, but I don't think you need 8 or 9 million to compete at the level, at that level on the women's game. Is it 2 to 5? That seems to be more we're in line of where it's at. Because I mean, if I'm UConn, I'm giving Serah Strong whatever she wants.
Right.
So like, because every year you're like re-recruiting the players, and it's almost like they get performance bonuses. You know, if they play really well, then, you know, it's like, hey, you know, their agent, their handlers, whatever, will say, you know, we bumped up to here, won a national championship, you know, how much more can I get? So I think that's the new world of college athletics, and the word student athlete is kind of no longer. It's just more college sports. Like it's just another stepping stone to eventually you're a full-time professional athlete.
Yeah. I think that's what makes it complicated right now, because traditionally, like, you know, for 20, 30 years, student athletes moved to Storrs, Connecticut to play for a prestigious program. And like Storrs, Connecticut, for those of you who haven't been there, like not much going on. Like it's a great college town in the sense that UConn is there, but otherwise it's a lot of woods. And as someone who likes to live in rural parts of the country, I don't mind that. But a college student, right? Like that's a tough draw, but people went because they knew they were going to be coached by the best coach. So it's just thing. Like I saw Serah Williams, you know, who obviously we know is a target for UConn, LSU doing like a photo shoot with the Tiger, and, you know, these big schools. It's like LSU has that name brand too. Like Angel Reese a couple years ago was, you know, in a Cardi B video. Like these are these things these young people are thinking about because they're trying to make the most of their talent while they can. And so it's really tough to know how athletes are making decisions right now. And I can't even predict.
Yeah, you mean to tell me that we can't use Meg Ryan, famous UConn alum, to lure some of these no one's seen When Harry Met Sally or You Got Mail? Like that doesn't resonate with the athlete of today. But honestly she's the most famous UConn alumni. I think there's an SNL guy who's on it was a UConn alum too. Can't remember his name. Anyway, I guess like the point is, you're right. Like I've been to Storrs a lot when I was a kid. Now, you know, as an adult, when I cover this sport, it's changed a ton. Like, so it's almost like a little mini city. Yeah. But you're right. Once you're there, you're there. Like you're not at USC where you can go downtown LA, or you're not at St. John's where you can go to the city. It's not as easy to just kind of leave, but that's also part of the attraction too. If you're a serious basketball player, right, and that's what you want to do, I think that's also the draw. Like trust me, it's going to coach for a 12-time national champion in Geno Auriemma, the standard that was established in 1995, all of that. But you also, now you get paid for it. So it's a pretty good deal. If you ask me.
Yeah, I think I would just love to see the numbers, because, you know, they're all sort of convoluted, and we're all in this new era, but I would love to see what is the roster construction budget for UConn women's basketball compared to other women's basketball programs.
Let me ask you a question before we move on to Paige going number one. Do you think that would benefit the players in any way if we knew how much money they were making? Because I feel like that would make it worse.
It wouldn't benefit the players, but the media, we'd benefit, because it would be a fascinating story, right? And so I think out of protection for, you know, young people, and you know, it's already crazy out there with people betting on games and like threatening athletes. Right. We don't need this other element of this person's making $2 million, and you know, so no, I absolutely don't think it would benefit the players, but I do think it would be fascinating to know as a member of the media to say, like, what are the different resources that are being put together, you know, to invest in these teams?
Yeah, I also think too, you know, the only type of transparency that I'm interested in is how quickly whether it's the NCAA or some new name to be formed later, they deal with how players on both the women's and men's side will sign with a team for X amount of money, literally sign a contract. and then another team will come in before the season starts and says, hey, we'll double that, and they leave. And what's the recourse that the teams have? And what's the recourse? I mean, are we talking buyouts? Are we talking the other school pays for the reimbursement? Like all of that. So that's kind of more what I'm interested in, kind of the nitty gritty of all of that, because I don't give a rip how much AZ Fudd is making, or Alex Caravan, or any of these guys, or any of these gals, because it's not my business. And, when they go and play for the Dallas Wings or the Phoenix Suns, you want to kind of publish it, cool. But they're still college people, they're still maybe not student athletes, but they're still on campus. And I don't want that to be put out there. I'm cool with knowing, what the parameters are and like how we're holding people accountable. But other than that, I'm good.
I don't think I need to know individual athletes' salaries. I think I would like to understand if there's like salary caps for specific sports.
Sure.
Because that's where the major disadvantages are going to come in. Like if one school can just pay double what another school can, that school is going to get better over time. And so I think like the reason salary caps exist is to have some level of like play equity and competitiveness. And I fear that without that knowledge, or without some basic guidelines, and we're a couple years away from those guidelines, I think this is going to be the Wild West for a while until it becomes normal. But I just think I'm concerned about competitive advantage, not what individual athletes are being paid.
I totally agree. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Paige Bueckers, how dare she go number one while I was on vacation? Didn't even get a chance to talk about it. So we're going to talk about her going number one, as well as Kaitlyn Chen getting drafted, Aubrey Griffin, and the impact that she'll have next year in the W. Welcome back to the Hoops Gap with your host, Mark Zanetto. I'm with T. Baker every Friday talking women's hoops, and how it affects the hoops capital of the world, the 12-time national champion UConn women's Huskies. Do you see this is my new towel from the championship. It's not fully in picture, mostly because we're splitting the screen, but it will be when I do a solo show. So that's the 2025 banner. I think someone messaged me and said, hey, you got a lot of men's paraphernalia behind you and you don't have any women's. I was like, dude, hey, you want to know why? I have the banners that you can buy, that you can like hang up, and they're in another part of this office, but the women's are sold out. Like, so I only could buy the men's, and also before this year, there was 11. So I was just like, I can fit them all in here. But like, my wife would probably be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why do you have 27 banners in your office? Anyway, so that's my women's championship for the 12-time national champion Huskies. Paige Bueckers went number one. No surprise. What does her impact? What does that look like for not only the WNBA but for Dallas in particular?
I think it's a transformational type decision. Like I think back to when Diana Taurasi went to Phoenix in 2004, when Sue Bird went to Seattle in 2002. You had this sense that these were like franchise shifting players. Maya Moore in 2011. So I think that there are players who just have an impact both on the court and off the court because of their ability to draw fans, the style that they play. I think that Dallas really benefits from having a player like Paige Bueckers because they've been unable to sort of get over that hump in recent years, despite having a lot of talent. But they've been, there's been some injuries. Satu Sabali left in the offseason, but now they have a backcourt of Paige Bueckers and Arike Ogunbowale. So some Notre Dame and UConn backcourt action there, which is a fascinating dynamic. But I think it changes just the trajectory of the franchise and their ability to sell tickets and their on-court success.
Also, just a city that's kind of reeling from, you lose a transformational player in a Luka Doncic. You lose into the Lakers. Now you get a player of the stature of Paige Bueckers, hopefully to kind of like uplift the basketball in that town. Like it's not. I mean, listen, it's not a destitute town. Dallas has won a title on the men's side. But yeah, I mean, Ogunbowale is a fantastic player. I just think Paige brings so much more than just her basketball talent. You're going to see men and women walking around with Paige Bueckers Wings jerseys, and that's the coolest. That's the coolest part about this, is that she can actually be the face of that franchise for years, and potentially the W as time goes on. I mean, there's other players. We've mentioned them already here on the show once. Angel Reese, and can't mention the WNBA without Caitlin Clark. But I just think Paige, who brings kind of this, I don't know what the word is. Like, help me out here, T. Like, when we're talking about her and what she can bring to the table, because she isn't this kind of lightning rod the way Caitlin Clark was, of kind of like political discourse, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of this neutral, savant of basketball, but she also always says the right thing. She always seems to be positive. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what I'm getting at. She's going to bring so much more to the city and to the W in the years to come.
Yeah, I think Paige is the type of player who obviously really dazzles with her like on-court performance, and she was famous out of high school. Like, people saw her and recognized her for her game. But I think the other element that she brings is just like a star quality, and we live in a world where people are becoming more famous from what they're doing online than maybe what they've even watched them play on the court. So her ability to have a social media presence that draws in a lot of people, like that's what drives fandom. That's what drives people buying tickets. So she's just found this way of being this like cool Gen Z like basketball player on the internet that I think people like, basketball and non-basketball fans alike. And that's the power of social media and being able to amplify your own brand, right? Like she had millions of followers right now that she's able to tell them exactly what she stands for. And she's always given back to the communities that she's in. So I think it's a great get for that Dallas community as well.
I have a friend of mine from high school. I played basketball with him, and he was actually a really good basketball player. His name was Tom Kostowski. He at Maloney High School in Meriden. Was just like, like a kid that you always saw with the ball, right? And his son is a damn good basketball player too. But there's a video that he showed me, or like was on social media, of his son like going up to Paige Bueckers and like saying something to her. And the smirk and the smile that she gave him, like he said, to this day, he will not tell me what he said to her. Like, like something like cute, like that a 7 or 8 year old would say to her. Yeah. But she gave him like a look like, okay, I see you. Like it was a great moment between like a basketball player that was looking up to someone that he obviously, reveres, and, taking pictures with AZ and all this other stuff. So like those moments I think are so genuine with her. Yeah. That that's the stuff that I'm excited for her, because she's gonna always play the sport that she loves and do well in that. But it's the touching of lives and like kids and adults that really enjoy her, that I'm really looking forward to kind of following her career in that way.
Yeah, it's the authenticity. People like to see people who are exactly who they are. I think also her story is really inspirational to people. She didn't have the most easy path. Like, she didn't go to UConn and win 4 in a row. Like she struggled. Right. So I think people really relate to that story. And I think she's just so able to manage the fame and the attention in a way that's just so graceful that certainly me as a 22-year-old would not have been able to do. So shout out to her.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. It's not something that I would handle well, I don't believe. You mentioned something pre-show and in that I wanted to kind of to touch on. Do you think that they move these games now to the American Airlines Center, because obviously that holds more people and she's likely going to attract more season ticket holders, more people that want to watch the game? Is that something that's in the works, or is that something that is debatable? Like, I'm curious.
Well, they already decided to have one game at the American Airlines when Caitlin Clark comes to town. So they're sort of seizing the opportunity to have that narrative of those two players. But we've seen in the past teams have moved games mid-season. In DC, they decided to play some games at, was it Capital One when Caitlin came to town, but also in Vegas they moved some games. It was I think it's part of a larger trend of WNBA teams realizing that more people can be interested in going to these games. I think Dallas plays in like a little bit of a bummer situation. They play at the University of Texas, Arlington. It's like players do their like runway walks into the game on like a college campus. It's just kind of bizarre for a professional team, in my opinion, to be playing there.
Mhm.
But you know, you grow as you continue to get more fans, and certainly Paige is going to bring in fans, and I think that means that to make more money, that the team will move games so they can sell more tickets. So I'm excited to see that happen. I think more W teams need to start doing it. And like we talked about, you know, last week, sometimes you got to build the house you want to see, not the one you're currently in, because then it
Right.
creates more opportunities for people to come in. So even if they're not selling out every night, like the ability to sell more tickets and over time get more fans is, I think, a net positive.
Yeah, I agree. There's only 7,000 capacity there. Yeah, they're gonna have to up that because you know, with Paige coming to town, I can't imagine that they're not going to sell out. But like, let's maybe pump that up to, you know, double those numbers. At least give me the Gamble numbers. At least give me, you know, touching 11,000, right? You know,
And
something
start
something to
slow.
that effect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like start just by having a couple games at American Airlines. Like you don't have to make the full plunge. I understand these teams are dealing with a lot of
sure.
logistics, and so, but start now and over time build to it. I think that's just what more W teams need to begin to do, is take those chances.
Yeah, the other thing too is like I know it may not look great on TV sometimes, but like for example, when now it's the Horizon Center, but when the women played against Carolina in the Greensboro Coliseum this year, that holds about 22,000 people. They didn't fill that up because they took away the upper bowl,
Yeah,
but everything else was full, and so
right.
like they like basically just blacked out those seats. And it looks great on television. I mean, there was 11,500 people there on a Friday at 6 o'clock. So like you can there are creative ways that you can figure some stuff out and still, you know, maximize your profits and all of that.
Yeah. And these arenas want to have events as often as possible, right? That's how they make their money. So why not take a chance on having some W games there? And speaking of that game, I remember watching on TV and thinking it was like just a really packed house. So you're right. I didn't
Oh yeah.
realize that there was only half an arena for that.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is like it's such a cavernous arena. Like it would have been stupid. They probably could have opened it a little bit. You might have got 14,000 people there, but you weren't going to fill it. And like I think that was the concern, is like you wanted to be, the atmosphere was really intimate. Like it felt like everybody was on the floor. So that was a really cool experience. I think hopefully, you know, Dallas will figure something out as Paige starts to kind of help this franchise you know, get to the next level. Quick question for you before we move to the next segment. What did you think of Kaitlyn Chen and Aubrey Griffin getting drafted? And also, I guess Gino got a heads up by Cheryl Reeves herself that that they were going to draft Aubrey.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I think, you know, even if they don't make the team, and these are tough teams to make, I think Kaitlyn Chen perhaps has a better chance because she's going to a new franchise with all new
Mm-hmm.
pieces, and there's a lot of room for a young player to make a team in Golden State Valkyries, and that's going to be a great franchise. They've already invested so much, and she's from California, so I would love to see her be on a WNBA roster. I think with Aubrey Griffin, like she was a player who just was on a trajectory to being a first round draft pick. And, you know,
Sure,
I think injuries got in her way and sort of stunted what she could show. But, you know, right now the Minnesota Lynx have 4 UConn alum on the roster for training camp because Cheryl Reeve knows that players that come out of UConn are prepared and they are ready to compete, even if they aren't at the talent level yet. So I love that Aubrey Griffin made the team. I think it might be a long shot for her to make that team. I mean, they made the championship, the WNBA championship last season. That's a loaded roster,
sure.
but you know that doesn't mean she can't find her way on a WNBA roster eventually. It doesn't always happen right away, but I just love that Cheryl Reeve continues to acknowledge the greatness that comes out of UConn. It's certainly won her 4 championships when Maya Moore was there, so she knows that Gino prepares players, and those two, you know, work together in USA basketball. There's a rapport there about, you know, just who they are as coaches and the types of players they produce.
No, it's big time respect, and I appreciate that from her. Okay, speaking of some things that we need to discuss in terms of back to leadership, because with Kaitlyn Chen gone, Aubrey Griffin, and obviously the big one, Paige Bueckers leaving and moving on to the number 1 overall pick with the Dallas Wings. who will lead UConn in 2025-26. Got a really great crop of people coming in, players, of which we have a quick video to show when we come back from the break. We're back on the Hoops Gap with T. Baker, powered by Big East Energy. All right, T. We had Paige go 1. Kaitlyn Chen went 30th, correct? Am I wrong? To the Golden State in the third round, and then 37th with Aubrey Griffin. So you lose huge pieces to your 12th national championship team, in particular on the leadership level, right? So who does Gino turn to this year? Because we talked about earlier in the show about, is he going to go to a transfer portal? Is he going to get Kayleigh Heckel? Are we handing the keys over to KK Arnold? Is it going to be a combination? Like, what are your initial thoughts about who steps up into more of this, more so like vocal leadership role?
It's interesting because when I think about this team and the players who have been here, I think certainly AZ Fudd is ready to this sort of make this her program. I think she came back because she wants to continue to grow, and I think she can continue to evolve into a vocal leader. I think she has that potential. I think sometimes there's just like a backseat that you take to your upperclassmen, your vets, and that's what Paige, filled for so long. I think one player that people don't necessarily think about because she doesn't play a lot is Caroline Ducharme. But every time I've talked to players or sort of like gotten a sense of the team's dynamics, like Caroline is just one of those people who is like almost like another coach on the sideline, coaching people up. So leadership takes a lot of forms. It's not always on the court. And I think, AZ and Caroline are the oldest players on the team. And I think they will step into that role. I think KK Arnold is a fascinating player to me because she always just kind of comes off like as sort of like a bull in a china shop. And she's like the heartbeat of a team and brings that passionate spark. And you kind of try to figure out like, how does that align with like leadership qualities, right? Is it that she's more the player who comes in and disrupts things as a sixth person off the bench? Could she be a starting point guard? Like, I'm not sure. And I'm curious what you think about KK's sort of like leadership potential. Is she the starting point guard, or does she continue to stay in that role of like off the bench spark?
I think she's definitely capable. I think last time we did a show, I made a comment about like, Gino has to trust his players, and maybe he doesn't know if he trusts KK yet because she's wild. And someone was just like, why are you hating on KK? I was just like, I'm not. Like I'm literally just going off of, how he's talked about her. And like, I think sometimes when you're the point guard, you have to be, and there's nothing, and I'm not saying this is a negative, right? You have to be kind of a serious player. Like, and KK has been, she's a serious player, but her mentality is goofy, right? She's a TikToker. She's doing a bunch of stuff. I mean, he called her like a TikTok menace, like all that stuff. So I think if she's going to mature to the next step in her evolution, just a little bit as an old guy, like just kind of dial that back a little bit to kind of be more of the like, hey, we're doing this right now, like in like the way a point guard talks to their team to kind of get them in line and not just play a role of, hey, I'm going to come in and disrupt things defensively. I think she can make that leap. And I actually think that that's where they're going to go. Like, I don't think they're going to get Kayleigh Heckel. I don't think they're going to do, maybe there's a name in the transfer portal that we're not aware of that comes in as a veteran point guard. But I think they're going to go with her, like, because they feel like they have her. They feel like they have Serah's going to be able to kind of lead in her own way. I know that they, like you mentioned, they have other guards, AZ. I mean, hell, we still haven't seen all that, Ali Zabel can do. So like, yeah, I think KK is going to take that leap and be the starting point guard. That's my guess. Like that's my, deductive reasoning guess.
And as you were listing like those traits of a leader, of a point guard, like the person that came to mind is Serah Strong, and she is just so like solid and unshaken. And I think that's sometimes like she leads by example. And I think Gino and the coaching staff would always like to see their players be more vocal on the court. That's certainly something right. Serah is going to have to grow into, but she is the centerpiece of this roster next year, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
like that's the piece of like, how does she take her game to the next level and become more of a vocal leader and not just show that she's an incredible talent. And sometimes as a freshman, it's hard to do. I'm curious to see how she makes that leap. If she does as a sophomore, she might be actually more of a year or two away from that sort of
right.
thing.
Yeah. That sometimes is a big jump. She's definitely going to have some help. I'm going to play a quick 9-second clip of Blanca Quinones in a playoff game in the Italian league. She's ridiculous. I think the phrase that I think I read somewhere that it was like, did Gino really just go get someone that plays like Tamika Catchings? Like it's a great comp. Just watch her movement. Watch how she takes this ball, goes the length of the floor, spins and scores. It's almost like breathtaking. Watch.
La partita fino a questo momento si vince l'umana, lei ma c'è un recupero ancora di Blanca Quinones che appoggia il tabellone e ancora in vita.
I mean, she's unreal. Like I've watched more than just that, but that's just like a taste of what we're going to get next year. Imagine that on top of Sarah Strong, on top of AZ Fudd, Ashlynn Shade, KK Arnold. If you get anything from Gandhi Malumamel, if you get anything from Kellis Fisher, this team's got to be the favorite to win it all again. Like if any of this stuff happens, I can't see anyone beating them.
Yeah, she's a talent that's being slept on because she's not always included in these national rankings. So people are saying, oh, it's a down year for UConn's recruiting because they got, players outside of the top 25 or whatever on ESPN Hoop Girls. But that's because Blanca Quinones is not on that list.
Right.
As an international player. So, Gino has found a real niche in recruiting international players. We see it with Jana El Alfie too, another player who wasn't on those preseason rankings. But identifies those global talents because Gino is just one of those people who has a global view on the game. He's coached 2 Olympics. He keeps an eye on those developing players in USA basketball pipelines and other international pipelines. So I'm excited to see her. She could very well be a starter for next year's team.
I don't think this has changed, but I wonder if there's a part of Gino, and I know this. I don't think this is about being nefarious or like trying to kind of like skirt the lines. Anybody that is not born in the States doesn't have NIL opportunities. I know that last year on the men's side, Zach Edey was like the player of the year, and he's from Canada, so he couldn't capitalize on that because of like whatever, like the loophole that is. So I wonder if there's a part of Gino that likes the international players for obvious reasons. They come in more ready, whatever that means. But also there's like not having to deal with the NIL aspect of it. I mean, it's a for an old school coach, it's not not a far stretch to say that that's part of the strategy.
And I think it's very clear in that case why a player is coming to play for you, right? It's like,
right,
okay,
exactly.
You're not coming for those opportunities. You're coming because you want to get better at basketball, and that's the ideal candidate for a UConn program.
1000%. Yeah, and again, that's not a negative on Gino. That's just, to me, that's just kind of who he is, and I think it's smart. Like if you want to know who really wants to be around, they're not making any money off of you, so obviously they're coming for some reason, right? Yeah. All right, listen, this is a great episode. I really appreciate you jumping on first one for me this week, which is a rare thing to say on a Friday. So I'm looking forward to the off season, kind of talking through some other things that are going on in the women's basketball world with UT. But right now, I think UConn's in great shape. I think the women's game is in great shape, and I'm looking forward to Unrivaled and other things that are coming down the pike.
Yeah, WNBA season's coming up in just a couple weeks, so we'll get to see, Paige in action. Hopefully, Kaitlyn and Aubrey at least get some preseason action, if not on those rosters. So I'm looking forward to just seeing, the next evolution of those grads.
Absolutely. Well, this has been another episode of the Hoops Cap. For T Baker, I'm Mark Zanetto. Make sure you're liking and subscribing to the podcast. Get it wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever. Transistor Radio. Find it on YouTube. We're here for you. We're out.